Hi friends, let's read the classic story of Tom Sawyer. A long time ago, there lived a little boy named Tom Sawyer, who was very clever but full of mischief. One fine summer morning, Tom's belly rumbled with hunger, so he crept to the kitchen to sneak some of his favorite sweet snack, Aunt Polly's freshly made jam. But while Tom was eating, his Aunt Polly came looking for him. "Yoo-hoo, Tom! Where are you?" she called. Tom tried to hide in the closet, but it was hopeless. With his sticky hands covered in jam, his aunt knew exactly what he had done. Furious, Aunt Polly told Tom that as a punishment, he would have to paint the fence the next day. A Saturday! The next morning, the sun was shining bright when Tom set out to paint. As he gathered his supplies, Tom thought of all the adventures he could have had, if only he wasn't stuck painting the fence. When his friends passed by, he sighed and tried to ignore their laughter. He wanted to play, too. Suddenly, Tom had an idea. He began to paint very seriously, with the eye of an artist. As Tom painted, Ben Rogers walked by carrying his toy sailboat. When he saw Tom, Ben called out a big hello, but Tom didn't answer. He was too busy painting and whistling to himself. Ben called out again, louder than before, and finally Tom lowered his brush and turned around. "Oh, hello, Ben. I didn't see you there," said Tom. "It sure is too bad you have to work today," laughed Ben. "Work? I guess you could call this work. Though it's not every day you get to paint a fence," replied Tom, who smiled and went back to painting. Now Ben was very interested, and before Tom could brush another stroke of paint, Ben tapped him on the shoulder. "Say, Tom, if I give you my sailboat, do you think I could paint the fence too?" he asked. I guess that's all right," said Tom with a shrug. He handed Ben the brush reluctantly, but he couldn't have been happier. His plan was working. As the hours passed, two more boys walked by the fence where Ben and Tom were painting. And when Tom told them what a special treat it was to paint a fence, they too traded their toys to pick up a brush and paint. Eventually, Tom was doing no work at all. By noon, the whole fence was painted a gleaming white. Tom had convinced the boys to do most of the work, and he still had the rest of the day to play. He set off skipping with his new toys in his arms, wondering what else he could do. By the river, Tom spotted his friends, Huckleberry Finn and Joe Harper, standing by a log raft. "Hey there, Tom," called Huck. "We're going to be pirates. Come join us." Tom hopped on the raft and the three boys set sail for adventure. They drifted to Jackson Island where they pretended to be outlaws. They explored the sand for buried treasure and chased each other through the bushes, using wooden sticks as swords. Tom, Huck, and Joe had so much fun, they didn't even notice how quickly the time passed. When the sun set, Tom realized it was much too late to travel back to town. The boys gathered wood from the forest, built a great roaring fire, and told the spookiest ghost stories they could think of. After a few hours round the campfire, they yawned, laid themselves out on the grass, and closed their heavy eyelids without a care in the world. In the morning, hungry and sore from sleeping on the ground, the boys decided it was time to head back to town. Being pirates was fun for a day, but now they were ready to return to their homes as little boys. They found their raft by the shore and floated back to town. When the boys arrived, the town was silent. No one was home. Tom searched his house from top to bottom, but Aunt Polly was nowhere to be found. Joe and Huck couldn't find anyone either. The boys wandered the empty streets, wondering where everyone was, when they heard voices coming from the town square. They followed the voices until they saw a large group of townspeople gathered around Aunt Polly. "I scolded Tom the last time I saw him," Aunt Polly cried. "Where could those boys be?" The townspeople comforted Aunt Polly, saying all sorts of kind things about Tom, Huck, and Joe and their generous natures. Tom had never heard anyone speak so nicely about him. His heart warmed knowing he was so well loved. As they approached the townspeople, someone noticed the boys. "Look, there they are!" Within seconds, the boys were surrounded. Everyone was so surprised and relieved to see them. Aunt Polly ran to Tom and hugged him tight. She kissed his cheeks over and over. "Don't you ever run off like that again," she cried. After all the worry they caused, Tom and his friends promised to behave. But Tom still had a burning desire to go on adventures and already had a new quest in mind. When they were pirates on Jackson Island, Tom hadn't found any buried treasure. Now, all he wanted to do was go digging for hidden loot. Luckily, Huck wanted to join in on the hunt too. The boys set off toward the forest at the edge of town. If there was treasure anywhere, Tom was sure it would be in those deep, dark woods. As they walked, he imagined gold coins spilling from rotten chests buried in the ground. "Where should we dig first?" asked Huck. "Let's start looking under old trees," replied Tom, and the two began their search. As Tom and Huck trampled through the woods, they heard a noise. "Shh! Did you hear that?" whispered Tom. The boys crouched down, listening for movement. "What is it?" said Huck. Out from the bushes darted a strange, ragged man carrying a big sack. He had a suspicious look on his face and kept glancing over his shoulder, as if he didn't want to be seen. "Let's follow him," whispered Tom, and the two quietly began trailing the man to find out where he was going. The man walked into the mouth of a large, dark cave and disappeared. Tom and Huck hid behind a bush and watched from a distance. After a few minutes, the man reappeared, but without the heavy sack. Tom and Huck looked at each other. They had to know what was in it. The cave was dark and filled with winding paths. Tom lit a torch, and they wandered until it seemed like they were going in circles. Just when Tom worried the light was going to go out, Huck cried, "Well, well, well, would you look at this?" Before their eyes lay the sack, and it was filled with gleaming gold coins. The boys were amazed. They really found hidden treasure. "We're rich, Tom!" cried Huck, throwing a few coins into the air to celebrate. "But the sack must weigh 50 pounds, said Tom. He was right. The sack was too heavy for just one of them to carry, so the two worked together to bring their treasure home. Just as the boys entered Tom's house, they ran into Aunt Polly. Tom told her about their cave adventure and the strange man who left the sack behind. Then he opened the bag and showed her all the yellow coins. "Half is for Huck, and half is for me," Tom cheered. Aunt Polly couldn't believe it. She said the strange man must have been the notorious robber who was seen around town earlier that day. "Thank goodness you are safe," she cried. "But can we keep it?" asked Tom. Aunt Polly hummed and hawed and finally decided that since nobody knew who owned the pile of gold, Tom and Huck could keep it for themselves. Tom Sawyer was now a very rich little boy, but that certainly wasn't going to put a stop to his mischief. After all, there were still all sorts of capers and pranks for him and his friends to get up to. Thanks for reading Tom Sawyer with us.